Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful lunch. My name is Horace Brown. I am the program administrator for Florida's Vocational Rehabilitation IPSI programs. And today I'll be talking to you briefly about vocational rehabilitation as a whole, but more specifically on how we can expand students' entrepreneurship as an employment option as well. Um, so today, our objectives consist of course, we will always discuss post-secondary and how it combines with the IPSI programs as a whole. We'll also describe how what VR can and cannot support in terms of aiding students attending these post-secondary comprehensive programs, as well as expanding entrepreneurship as an employment option. But before we go there, we want to talk about who it is that we serve and who we are. For some of you, we may be familiar, but for those who may not know who we are, Florida Vocational Rehabilitation, we help and assist individuals with disabilities, whether it's physical or mental, help them find or maintain employment. In order to qualify for our program, we do have eligibility requirements, which consist of having a physical or mental disability, of course, a willingness to want to work, and then a disability that results into a significant barrier to you working. Now, there are some stipulations that will automatically qualify you for VR services or presume you eligible for our services, which includes if you receive Social Security benefits such as SSI or SSDI, you are then presumed eligible. Now, a part of the eligibility process too as well, in the event that you do not have medical documentation to support your diagnosis, or you don't quite know what that diagnosis may be, VR could assist you with an assessment to identify what your proper diagnosis is. So even in the event that you are ineligible for VR services, you'll still walk away with that medical documentation and referral services to help you moving forward with this process. Now, once you are determined eligible, this is where we start our process. We always emphasize informed choice with our clients because clients have the autonomy to make the decisions on their case as long as they're reasonable. And we stress this matter of informed choices because particularly when it comes to their employment goal, we want them to think broad. We want them to think of things that they really and truly want to be successful in, not just placing them in any other type of employment. So our goal is to identify, that employment, what it takes to them to reach that full employment potential. And so once they've identified that employment goal, we then move on into creating an individualized plan for employment, which we use the acronym IPE. And in that IPE, we discussed and list the list of services that are provided to help this person from a holistic standpoint. So employment is our focus. However, the person is the main objective. So from a holistic standpoint, we're looking at all those components that are required for this person to maintain employment. For example, if the individual says, hey, I want to work I want to become, let's see, an electrician, for example. Well, we'll look at that employment goal as an electrician, and we'll look at all the details it takes in order for that person to encompass that goal. Case in point, we know automatically if this person wants to become an electrician, school is involved. So technical school may be an alternative or an potential area or service that VR can assist with. We also want to look at guidance and counseling, and I'll go into that further in our slides too as well. But guidance and counseling is also the assistance that they receive from the VR counselor throughout the duration of the case. This is with coordinating services for them. This is for guidance, and this is for any event there needs to be an adjustment made to the IPE plan. So if the goal that they initially start out with doesn't always pan out, if they want to go into a different direction, then the VR counselor is there to assist them with that process. And what we use is called the Career Index Plus. Typically, when we're creating the IPE plan, we identify 3 goals. All right. So in the event that the first one doesn't work, we have 2, a secondary and tertiary goal that we can use to help that individual redirect their path so that services aren't interrupted. So there's a seamless transition. And usually those goals kind of intertwine with one another based on those transferable skills from the first goal. And last but not least, anything that is agreed upon on that IPE plan, that is like your binding contract with VR. So we cannot do anything that isn't presented within that IPE plan. And it has to be mutually agreed upon by the counselor and the client. And in most cases, if the individual, and please note, if they are under the age of 18, they must have consent of their parent, the legal guardian. All right. So that gets us into how we intertwine with post-secondary education and the different levels of support and what VR can do. So particularly in this case, when we're talking about the IPSE programs or inclusive post-secondary education, we have three forms of it. We have the public colleges, we have community and technical, and we have private. Now, in most cases, VR has a relationship or has partnered with most of the colleges across the state in which we provide services to them, and they're already listed as a vendor in our network. Now, occasionally we may have situations where an institution may not be affiliated with VR, and in most cases, those are your private institutions. It's not to say that an individual cannot attend a private institution, but however, there are stipulations that will come into play as to what VR can provide financially in terms of supports. All right, as you can see here on the screen, VR will pay up to the highest state public rate for a private institution versus a public institution. So keep that in mind. That's a question that comes up quite often in reference to what levels of support VR can offer from a public to a private institution. So those numbers fluctuate each year. At the end of my presentation, I'll actually have a link that you can click on or you can copy for you to use to identify what the highest public rate at this current time. And keep in mind, this is updated yearly. So it's not semester, but yearly. These numbers are updated so you can identify which college or public college has the highest public rate. And going into that, I'll talk a little bit more about that financial piece of it. Now, once we determine how do we sponsor these programs, right? So financial participation is what we use to identify what VR can and cannot pay. All right, and this financial participation is the method we use. Previously, before 2019, training, which is also considered anything post-secondary education, was an exempt service of VR. Those stipulations changed in 2019 and rewritten to a non-exempt service, which means we take into consideration of the financials of the participant or the participant's legal guardian's income from the previous year. And this is calculated based on the current poverty rate, federal health and poverty rate of the year. Next slide, I will show you the examples of this. So you have your financial participation chart. So based on that, on this chart, that amount that the participant will be responsible for paying for services is dependent upon the family household size. So let me give you an example. In the event, let's say you have a student who is looking to attend one of your programs, and that student is living under the household of their parents, right? Their parents' tax returns is what we would use, and they still claim the student, granted. We would use that parent's tax returns to determine what their financial participation would be if they qualify and it was identified on the IPE for to support this training, okay? So using that example, if the individual, let's say their parents combined made $90,000, okay? We would take this chart and we would look at the household size. So we're talking about the student, we're talking about the two parents' income. So we're talking about a household of three. So we'll go down, we'll look at family size 3. The exclusion amount for a family size of 3 is 60,000. It's 60,000 roughly, right? So what we will do then is we'll come over to table B and look at the amount that we just mentioned to determine how much the student is responsible for paying. So we said 60,000, right? Is and they make 90,000. Well, they went over the 60,000 by about 30,000, right? So we'll find 30,000 on this income exclusion amount. So from the 60,000, and we're including the 30,000, which is the total amount of their income, they will be responsible for the 80% of participation with VRs, with assistance from VR, which means VR would cover that 20%, and then they would be responsible for the 80% based on that, based on our financial participation chart. So I want you to keep that in mind in terms of what the structuring of programs and what VR is allowed to pay for and what we cannot pay for. Additionally, I do want to talk about some other things that came up that may have arisen in terms of authorized or approved services that we can do as well. You have both your exempt and non-exempt services that VR can sponsor. As I mentioned before, with those VR service related to VR services, the things that are exempt, they're automatically that we do not charge the client for or their parents for, that they have access to. That's guidance and counseling. That's your on-the-job training. That's your pre-employment transition services, your supportive employment services, and your job search and placement services. I've mentioned before with the guidance and counseling, that's your coordination of services throughout this plan. However, with the on-the-job training, we do have experienced employment specialists throughout the field to help assist with job placement or job readiness skills. In the event that they do have partnerships with local businesses that will provide on-the-job training for these individuals. And then we do have pre-employment, which is your this is our pre-employment transition services for youth who fall under the age range of 14 to 21. We do offer services to them too as well. And your supportive employment for your more intensive services for those individuals, particularly those individuals who with intellectual disabilities fall within this realm. And we provide that additional supports and ongoing supports and identifying them throughout the duration of their cases. And then, of course, job search and placement services. Typically, we identify these two areas in the event that the person is, the client or student is going to school. These are some of the services that we would initiate upon the completion of school. So we will look at employment opportunities based on the credentials that they have obtained through your program. And again, as I always mentioned, one way to cohesively gel VR and these programs and your programs is to making sure that these programs are catered towards the person's employment goal too as well. Our focus, like I mentioned before, is employment, but holistically, if there are credentials and there are skills that they can obtain through your program, it kind of helps gel the process and more buy-in from counselors approving of these programs down the road. Now, some of those exempt services, as I mentioned before, and when we mean non-exempt, those are the services that usually have some costs attached to them based on that financial participation that I previously just mentioned. That would be your tuition and books. That would be maintenance and housing if approved or if required, assistive technology, transportation, uniforms and supplies, and if additional backgrounds are needed. Okay. Now, moving forward from that, we also have additional areas that we wanted to touch on, which includes that entrepreneur side of what's a good fit for an employment option. All right. Now, when we look at self-employment, which is another component of VR, it's its own entirely separate program from the training component. Our self-employment program consists of 7 parts. However, initially, when we identify with youth or students who are interested or have an entrepreneur spirit, these are some of the characteristics we're looking at. What's a good fit? Now, we do not deter anyone at any time from their dreams, goals, or aspirations. What we're actually looking at are ways to gel what they're trying to do into their employment outcomes. So we're looking at those individuals who are creative and innovative, We're also looking at those opportunities for individuals who don't fit into that realm of traditional employment. So if their ideas or because of their impediment doesn't necessarily fit into a natural, the traditional trajectory of what we deem as employment, then entrepreneurship could be a alternative option for them. And then, of course, we look at flexible accommodations in hours based on their impediment. There may be some things that they can't do in a traditional setting where they would need, such as frequent breaks or modifications to their, either if they're working from home or in a workspace, to help them fulfill their dreams. And then we also include those individuals who are highly motivated. Those are the ones that we're targeting because they're going to be self-sufficient. So with this process is what it engulfs is we pair them with a certified technical assistance consultant. And this is a business technical assistance consultant. So part of our program and what we did was we have identified, we came up with this program. It's derived back in 2009, our self-employment program, that is to maximize the outcomes for self-employment cases. So in order for individuals going through self-employment, this self-employment program, we deemed it might be more fitting if they had someone to help them through this process. And granted, the VR counseling may not be readily available at all times. However, having the certified business technical assistance, or CBTAC, is the individual who has the experience and the knowledge and skill base to help this individual navigate through their entrepreneur ideas and aspirations. So we developed this program to provide supports. Each of our CBTACs are trained through Griffith and Hammonds to, and they must consist of a background check, and they have credentials within the following fields of business. Right, it's so many years of business experience. So these individuals who are helping them have the experience and technical assistance to help these individuals with their employment goals. As I mentioned before, there are 7 benchmarks that are associated with self-employment. So in order for us to identify if self-employment is a good fit, we always encourage the first benchmark, which is the initial self-employment exploration. During this phase, this is when we pair the youth or student with a CBTAC of their choosing. We provide them with the list of vendors or of certified CBTACs that they can choose from. Once they've chosen the individual they would like to work with, we would schedule a meeting with them to meet with the CBTAC. The counselor is welcome to attend, but isn't required to attend those meetings. So that is more personal and building rapport with the CBTAC and the client. So in these cases, during that initial meeting, we're exploring that idea of employment, or what it looks like to that individual in terms of working for themselves. What experience do they bring to the table? We're looking at transferable skills that they've done from previous work to help them explore that goal. And the purpose of this initial meeting is to expand the idea of what self-employment means and making sure that they get a full picture of what it entails to run my own business. So during that initial meeting, all of this takes place. Once we've done that, we move on to the business concept and development. During this business concept and development phase, we're expanding upon that profile. So we're creating a business owner profile. We're looking at it from a full perspective of, okay, what is your business in its concrete infancy? So we're looking at some of the things that you're going to need initially. How many people are going to be working with you? What's the product that you're going to be selling? These are some of the things that we're looking at during this phase. And then we move on into our marketing research and feasibility assessment. This is where we test the theory of your business. So during this phase, we're identifying whatever the product is you're looking to sell, if it's sellable or if it's marketable for you. So the whole purpose of this program is to set you up for success. So we want to test this out, and we have a variety of ways in which we can do this. This can be done through a survey. This can be done through a sell and buy, or this can be done through having this product surveyed through a housing of people. An example I can give you, one example I always use is selling sauce. So if you had an individual who had this unique recipe that they want to sell, and this product they want to advertise, we've gotten past the initial and the business concept development. Now we're looking to test this product to see if it will sell on shelves. Well, in this case, this is where we would market this product. This would include labeling for this product, contact information of how they can reach you. And we might sell, and we can sell this product on the shelves. Let's say, give or take, we give it 6 months. Say we put it in your local food store and sell it on the shelves. We'll come back within 6 months to see how well that product sells. Now, of course, periodically, the CBTAC and the council will check on that product to making sure if it needs to be restocked and so forth, so we track the sales. But this will give you an opportunity to see how well your product will do in the store. And that's the purpose of the feasibility, which is one of the most important components of the benchmarks. Once you've identified if this product is marketable and it can sell, then we move on to the marketing and business financials. So now we need a game plan. We need to identify what are the financials in terms of marketing and the financials in terms of the business. Using that same model, what is our marketing plan? So there's an avenue for that in terms of where are we going to promote this business, whether it's through social media outlets, whether it's through flyers, posters, through our website. All of that finance has to be calculated, as well as on the business side. What are all the materials I need for my business? Itemized materials, jars I need, glass, manufacturing costs, all of those things are calculated too. And keep in mind, not just for a month, we look at it from a 3-year projection standpoint. Now, during this 3-year projection, and keep in mind, this is a lot. So that's why I said the CBTAC will be along the ride for with the council, with the client, so they're not alone going through this process. They'll help navigate them through what is needed in order for them to fulfill these benchmarks effectively. All right. And in some cases, if some information is left out, the counselor may request additional information, and the CBTAC will have to get that just to ensure that there are no loopholes in the plan. All right. Once we've identified all of these things, we move into the business plan development. This is more of your complete more concrete draft of your business, right? So we've identified marketing, we've identified business financials, operational procedures, management procedures. All of these things are put into place. And if you look at it through these benchmarks, you're basically putting together a business plan in segments instead of one full plan at one time. This helps ease that worry or burden of thinking, oh, I have to complete a business plan within a matter of months. No, but in most cases, our self-employment plans usually or typically can be up to a year and upon completion because of the steps that are required in that feasibility assessment, as I was mentioning earlier. And so once you have that completed business plan, you're ready for these things to be purchased, right? So VR in our state, we will provide financial assistance with everything that is listed in that business plan to help them be successful. Now, keep in mind, this is for startup costs. This isn't for longevity. So anything that is pertinent to them starting this business, VR will assist with those things. All right, if we see them as being feasible. And then, of course, once the business is launched, this is where your implementation hours come into play. So we identify that CBTAC is still with you. We're identifying what is needed for you to how much support you need once you're up and running. So we're looking at your day-to-day operations. That CBTAC is going to be with you hand in hand, making sure that business is moving smoothly. You have all the supports you need, all the accommodations you need. That will come also too from the counselor to ensure that your business launch is successful. I also wanted to give you, once that is completed, then the CBTAC will gradually wean off the hours in which they're assisting you. So it may start out where you're being assisted for 40 hours in a week or so, and those hours should drastically reduce each month as your business is doing well. So, giving you some types of examples of self-employment, we've seen a multitude of things. I just took these few to highlight because they're some of the most common recent ones that I've seen lately. And with these types of employment comes different types of resources needed for them. I chose these because they identify with different perspectives of how VR can assist with that entrepreneur spirit, because everyone doesn't have the same ideas or concepts for employment for themselves. For example, for the food truck, now VR doesn't purchase vehicles. However, we do have modifications. For example, if a person is owning a food truck, if they already purchased a food truck, then VR could assist with vehicle modifications to help this person modify this truck so it's accessible for them to run their business too as well, as long as it's tied to their disability. So the VR can assist with those types of changes. Graphic designers for individuals, there may be some adaptive equipment. We've seen individuals who needed large print or this Dragon software on their computers to help them navigate in more adaptive assistive technology to help them run their business as well. Chef, I thought chef was a unique one that can play into two parts. One being that if an individual is attending your program, let's say if it's a culinary track that they're on, and they're getting those skills from there, and there's a certification that they obtain, and they're looking to owning their own business, then there's where VR can kind of help with those certificates or certifications to help them work for themselves, or culinary certifications, okay? Then you have insurance company. This is one of the most recent self-employment cases that I had. That's why I say it's a broad range of things that you can do. In this particular case, if an individual had their own company, let's say it was all remote. So if you're working out of the home and you need a certain percentage or percentage of your household to be utilized for self-employment or for your business, but that side of the house needs modifications for you to work in that workspace, then there are some opportunities there for VR to kind of assist you with your startup, such as the things that are needed for the business. And clothing store. So this tied more into the retail side of things. So VR will not purchase a real estate. However, there are some things that VR can do, and I will talk about those on the next slide too as well. And bicycle repair is another alternative form of self-employment that I've seen recently, where an individual wanted to own his own bike repair shop, and we assisted them in this regard, and they've been successful. So with that, as I said previously, with our previous things that we can do, I thought it would be great to show you some of the things we can and cannot do on both regards. So I showed you for post-secondary. Now I'm showing you for our what VR can support in terms of self-employment. So as you can see here, and I won't go through each and every one of them, but you can see there are some things here that VR will support. And keep in mind, this is all goes back to startup. So acquiring a license or business permits that are for you to obtain your business, VR most definitely will help you with that. Security deposit for a business will help with those things too. Marketing startup, of course, and legal costs, and those stocks and equipments that you need to start a business. All right. And keep that in mind. Just as you have those things that we can support, I also have to show you the things we cannot support. So with those things we cannot support pre-existing taxes. So paying taxes, the ongoing support of a business. Now, keep in mind, we're not just going to leave behind dry as soon as your business is open. However, we have a plan to kind of help transition you to independence upon the exiting of your starting your business and exiting of VR. All right. And then, of course, if it is an existing franchise, we cannot support an existing franchise. I think the purpose of this was for you to have your own business and not a franchise. of course, gradually upon the success of your business, depending on what that field may be, then you're welcome to venture off into other avenues. And that goes into the expansion of an existing business. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, things we cannot purchase real estate or construction of real estate from ground up. So in the event that a person is renting out a space, now that is different. That's leasing an office space, and that goes back to when I say we can help with startup of a lease and so forth, things of that nature. And those funds would be directly sent to that provider or that leasing agency, not to the client themselves, to ensure that it's being paid. Last but not least, I also want to let you know that VR is here to support you in various ways. As I mentioned throughout this presentation, these are some of the areas, not all, but some of the areas that VR can provide support, whether it's with diagnosis and evaluation, guidance and counseling. That diagnosis and evaluation goes back to what I was referring to with the assessment to determine if you're eligible for services. The guidance and counseling goes into the VR counselor assisting you throughout this entire process and coordinating services for you. That also goes into the referral services. So if there is something that VR cannot provide directly, we do have a multitude of partners that we can refer you out to that could provide assistance. Even if you are determined ineligible for VR services, there are additional services that we have access to that we can refer you out to. And then, of course, like your job-related services. So in the event the person is ready for employment or looking to find employment, VR will assist with those employment readiness skills to help you obtain employment. The training component ties directly to your programs as to if they're attending that program and it is sufficient for them to find employment, then VR will sponsor or assist with sponsorship of those things with those guidelines I mentioned with financial participation. In the event interpreter services are needed for the deaf and hard of hearing, we do provide interpreter services. We can provide assistance with occupational expenses, such as licenses for them to obtain for a business, either for themselves or working in a certain particular field. And that goes along with the technical assistance. We do have provider business reps in the field who are constantly advocating for individuals with disabilities and finding employment opportunities, not just on a local level, but on a statewide level, to identify opportunities for them once they've completed either training or job readiness services so that they can find opportunities for employment. And then, of course, your rehab technology in the event you need those additional assistance or accommodations to do the job or perform the duties of a job and modifications are needed. We have a great partnership with FAST2 as well to help us with any type of adaptive equipment or hearing aids and things of that nature. And then, of course, our supportive employment and services is for your more intense services for individuals who need more in-depth insight or training or help assistance along the way. And this concludes our presentation. I will take questions now. If you have those, please feel free to let me know if we have any in the chat. I'll keep the line open. You can just unmute yourself. I also want to note too that we have a bunch of we have a bunch of our points of contacts on this call today. So I will be uploading our liaison list. We have IPSI liaisons located in each area of Florida. As I mentioned before, we also have that contact link here. If you want to know what those local rates are for this school year or term, you can follow this link here you see on the page. I have listed here at the bottom. It'll give you the most updated rates for the highest public student rates per semester, and you can find that information there. So are there any other questions?
Horace, this is Pat Mulvihill. I'm a facilitator for the conference. I'm looking at the chat box. First question was, are colleges and universities an educational academic vendor or employment vendor? Do they have to do anything to become an employment vendor?
Naturally, in our system, they are classified as educational institutions. I would have to double check, but as an employment, they would have to my knowledge, they would have to apply to be an employment provider. Now, institution wise, they are all identified as that in our system. There are some factors that make some of the universities unique in terms of what they can and cannot provide. It just depends on the college or university and what they signed up for when they initially enrolled to be a vendor of VR. So some of their titles may vary from college to college. So it's not across the board the same. So because of those unique programs such as the IPSIs, some of the colleges have different services they can provide in addition to education training.
Okay. So need to check with what they applied for.
Yes.
Okay. Then there was another comment. The person met someone recently who used VR to become a self-employed realtor. All right. You can add that to your list.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And they want to know if you can email us the presentation.
Absolutely.
It's being recorded, so it'll be on the website.
Absolutely.
So
and if you go to the exhibitor portal too, you'll have a list of the liaisons, and we'll also upload a copy of this presentation at the end of this recording. You'll have it in both areas. Right.
Okay, that's all the questions I see in the chat box. Does anyone have any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, must have done a great job, Horace. No questions.
Hey, Horace, I just wanted to step in and introduce myself. I'm Peter Shepis, and I'll be taking over for Horace. But I also wanted to answer that question of if we accepted employment providers. Currently, VR is not accepting employment providers. You can look at our website, rehabworks.org, and that'll tell you, you can keep checking back to see when we may be accepting applications for providers.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for that information. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you very much, Horace. Appreciate your time and your effort in doing this. And don't forget, folks, tomorrow is another busy day. All right, have a good evening. Keep safe, everyone. Thank you.